but we do know that Comer is playing games, because if he really wanted to get to the bottom, you would start with the person that actually has the information, which would be Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi is the first person that should have came in front of our committee to answer questions about why it is that she violated our subpoena. Instead, he's ignoring her violation. And then once we ended up with the Epstein Transparency Act, she has violated the law as it relates to that, and he still does.
This may look like a political dispute over testimony, but it's actually a stress test of congressional authority itself. What's really being tested here is whether oversight still functions when enforcement becomes selective and inconvenient. This raises broader questions about how power is constrained, who decides when the rules apply, and what happens when accountability mechanisms are quietly sidelined. In this video, we'll break down how procedural choices can reshape transparency, shift institutional responsibility, and redefine the balance between authority and restraint inside Congress.
So Congressman Biggs came out and said that Maxwell's lawyer said that she had no indication that either President Trump or President Clinton were implicated in any wrongdoing. Wondering if you'd confirm that you heard that, but also how you evaluate that statement given some of the comments you're making about her clemency plea.
And we'll take your question and then we'll answer and wrap up.
I just wanted to ask what you all make of Congressman Comer's back and forth with the Clintons on closed-door tape deposition versus public testimony, and if you're worried that this might derail what's going on right now and lead Republicans back to pursuing contempt.
Yeah, on the Clintons and Trump, she did say that she is happy to talk on the record to confirm that there was no wrongdoing on their part. I think that is part of her campaign, again, to get a pardon and get support from both parties. That's why she's mentioning Clinton too as well. But they were very explicit on saying she'd love to talk on the record to absolve the Clintons and Trump.
I'd say about the back and forth part of things, Secretary Clinton made it clear. If you want to do this, let's do this out front and in the open, right? And it seems like they don't want that to happen, because what they want to do is they want to go behind closed doors and then come out with whatever spin that they want to put on it and have it be a he said, she said. I also do believe that this is yet another way of them trying to distract and hopefully trying to get Democrats to say, well, never mind, we don't want to talk about it if you're going to go after the Clintons. Again, for us, this is not about partisanship. This is right versus wrong. And frankly, we've not seen anything that would have made me believe that Secretary Clinton, of all people, should be coming in front of them in the first place. So this is about getting to the truth for us, and we understand that if there are names mentioned, that we should follow that evidence, but we do know that Comer is playing games, because if he really wanted to get to the bottom, you would start with the person that actually has the information, which would be Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi is the first person that should have came in front of our committee to answer questions about why it is that she violated our subpoena. Instead, he's ignoring her violation, and then once we ended up with the Epstein Transparency Act, she has violated the law as it relates to that, and he still doesn't have anything to say. So I want people to be very clear-eyed. They are playing games right now, and again, this is all about shielding and distracting from the President of the United States, who is absolutely mentioned in those files. And frankly, we know that he had already been sued prior to him ever entering office, where there were allegations that he sexually molested a child. This is on the record. Now, granted, the case didn't go through and whatever, but we know that the allegations were there way before he even took office the first time.
And I'll just wrap this very briefly and just say this. The Clintons are cooperating. There are no grounds whatsoever at this point for any kind of contempt motion. Their deposition is scheduled, as far as anyone knows, it will occur. I just want to say this. The fact that Andy Biggs walked out of that room and delivered the message that Ghislaine Maxwell wanted was exactly what she wanted to send to Donald Trump. Clearly, he was acting as her messenger, because we were told explicitly to not repeat things that were said in that room. It's very clear she's campaigning for clemency, and it's very clear that Mr. Biggs delivered the message to Donald Trump. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
The moment that just unfolded was not loud, but it was loaded. A quiet exchange at the end of a press interaction, a series of questions about accountability, about testimony given in private versus testimony delivered in public. And then a sharp, unmistakable accusation that the Oversight Committee is being steered away from the person who actually holds the answers. In that moment, Representative Jasmine Crockett did not speak in abstractions. She spoke in specifics, names, actions, missed obligations, and a refusal to comply with lawful demands from Congress. What we witnessed was not just a dispute over process, it was a confrontation with the way power resists scrutiny. At the center of this moment is a simple idea that has shaped American democracy from its beginning. No individual, no office, no political figure is supposed to stand above oversight. When subpoenas are issued, they are not suggestions. When laws are passed, They are not optional. And when Congress demands answers, silence is not a neutral act. It is a choice. Crockett's remarks cut through the noise by rejecting a familiar distraction, the endless pivot toward partisan targets, the rehearsed cycle of deflection, closed-door exchanges followed by carefully curated summaries. She argued that this pattern is not accidental. It is strategic. A way to dilute accountability by spreading attention everywhere except where it belongs. Her focus was narrow and deliberate. If the goal is truth, you start with the person who controls the information. If the goal is transparency, you do not hide behind selective disclosures. And if the goal is justice, you do not allow procedural games to replace substance. This is where the hearing moment becomes larger than the room it happened in, because what is being exposed is not only an individual dispute, but a system that too often rewards delay. A system where public confidence erodes not from a lack of laws, but from a lack of enforcement, where legal authority exists on paper, yet consequences remain elusive in practice. Crockett framed the issue as moral clarity rather than political allegiance. Right versus wrong, truth versus obfuscation. And that framing matters because it reminds viewers that oversight is not revenge and transparency is not theater. They are safeguards. They exist to protect the public from exactly this kind of uncertainty. The conversation also revealed something deeper about how power communicates. Closed sessions create shadows. Selective leaks create narratives. And when messages are carried indirectly, accountability becomes fragmented. Crockett suggested that what we are seeing is not confusion, but choreography. A sequence designed to send signals without submitting to scrutiny. That is why public testimony matters. Not because it guarantees honesty, but because it allows contradictions to surface, it allows records to be examined. It allows citizens to witness the process rather than rely on summaries filtered through political interests. This moment also forces a reckoning with institutional responsibility. Oversight committees are not symbolic. They are constitutional mechanisms. When violations are ignored, the damage is not abstract. It sends a message that compliance depends on influence, not obligation. And that message travels fast. It reaches the public, who are asked to trust systems that appear unwilling to police themselves. It reaches future officials who learn what consequences look like in real time. And it reaches institutions, which must decide whether authority is something they exercise or something they merely reference. Crockett's insistence that the truth should lead the investigation rather than partisan convenience echoes a principle older than any single administration. Evidence first. Accountability always. No shortcuts. The tension surrounding these files is not only about what they contain, but about who controls their release and under what conditions. Transparency delayed is not neutral. It reshapes outcomes. It protects reputations, and it shifts the burden away from those with power onto those demanding answers. In that sense, this hearing moment becomes a mirror. It reflects how governance operates when scrutiny gets uncomfortable, whether institutions lean into accountability or retreat into procedural fog. The stakes here are not theoretical. They touch public trust. They shape whether citizens believe that oversight has teeth or merely optics, whether laws apply evenly or selectively, and whether the promise of accountability is real or performative. As the exchange concluded, there was no dramatic outburst, no grand finale, just a clear assertion that the games are visible, the distractions are intentional, and the refusal to comply speaks louder than any statement delivered behind closed doors. That quiet clarity is what makes this moment resonate. Because democracy does not usually fail in explosions, it erodes in silences, in unanswered subpoenas, in ignored statutes, in processes designed to exhaust rather than enlighten. What Crockett demanded was not spectacle, it was presence. Answers delivered openly, responsibility acknowledged directly, and a process that respects the public enough to let them see it unfold. This is what oversight looks like when it refuses to be managed, when it insists on confronting power instead of circling it, and when it reminds those watching that accountability is not partisan property. It is a public right. The question now is not whether the system has the tools to pursue the truth. It does. The question is whether it has the will to use them. And that is where this moment leaves us, watching, waiting, and deciding whether silence will be allowed to stand in for answers. If you believe transparency matters, if you believe oversight must mean something, and if you believe accountability should not depend on political convenience, support our work to expose the truth. Subscribe to Liberty Report USA.